Okay, all right, Steve, thank you for being here. I'm looking forward to doing this with you. Basically, what we want you to do for us is run through your entire life from your earliest memory all the way up until the present day.
All right, let's see how my memory works. No, looking forward to it. My earliest memory was probably playing with my brother. Got a brother who's 2 years older, and I remember just having lots of games, lots of play, quite competitive from a very young age. And he was always this like worthy competitor, and it was always just kind of pushing me to kind of play up with his older friends. I always wanted to fit in with him, and we just went to town on anything from Monopoly to Halo to board games or whatever it was around the house. Very loving mum. She was just the nurturing, caring type. And then my dad, I think from a very young age, wasn't around much. They both were small business owners. My dad probably just worked from before I got up, and then probably before I went to bed. Like he was just still out of the house, or come home just before I went to bed. So I'd see him on the weekends, like around his office table, and just I think I developed, looking back on it, this sense of, I really need to, like, if I'm gonna get this like 30 minutes time with him, like I need to tell him all the achievements I did, or thinking that would get me back to some sort of like acceptance or um, credibility with him. I think I like was like probably desiring his love and affection and stuff that I just didn't have as a young age, where I probably got like the abundance of that from my mum. And they're often the two combinations, I think, for most founders or entrepreneurs, where they have this like chip on the shoulder leads to chips in pockets, but this like underlying love and belief from your mum that you can do anything in the world. So, and then my brother was probably there just pushing me along the way as a kind of a worthy teammate or competitor. Grew up in Sydney, grew up in Cremorne Point, went to public school for primary school. Parents were working across the road. And I remember always into sports. I think that's how I found my identity. I was probably naturally a little bit taller, a little bit more, I guess, bigger than the other kids. So always played up in soccer initially, and then rugby as I was getting into high school. But was good at swimming and running. And yeah, I felt at most home on the sporting field. Playing would be, I guess, how I'd summarize it. Um, I think in terms of school, I was always the type of person that didn't really study much and kind of mucked around in class. I was a bit of a class clown, and um, my parents said I liked attention and kind of doing things to get attention. And but I'd say up until about year five, I had a very happy, positive, just great childhood. I don't remember anything particularly bad happening. I'd see other kids having their parents would be divorced, and mine were like what I thought were a happy family at the time. And everyone was healthy, and we had great holidays. And at the public school I went to, we were probably on the slightly more affluent side, and I felt like we were kind of blessed and had a great Aussie upbringing. From about year five, I feel like I started to struggle with my identity a bit. From if I wanted to be cool and how did I fit into the cool group. And um, I had a speech impediment when I was a kid, so I couldn't really say R's properly. And I remember getting bullied quite a bit for that, particularly coming into year five and year six. I hated public speaking. I remember like vomiting and crying about having to go up on stage. I was sports captain, but I went for like school captain and completely fucked up the speech and cried. Like I literally ran out of the hallway crying at the end of it, and obviously didn't get it because it wasn't that display of leadership I'm sure the school was hoping for. Um, but then, yeah, coming into year seven, I went to Shaw School in North Sydney, and immediately felt probably a bit out of place there. We were probably then on the very bottom end of the affluent side, um, and everyone I felt had their friendship groups from primary school, and I was kind of the only kid from public school, I felt. And for the first couple of years of Shaw, I think I was telling my parents I didn't want to be there and I didn't really fit in. And I remember eating lunches kind of by myself or hanging out in the library and just trying to figure out how I could navigate this jungle of high school. And then I think also sports and gym I kind of got serious about in year eight and year nine. And there was the first time I could see like putting effort into something like the gym or training would then lead to really obvious results on the other side of it. So like this effort equals reward, and like pain equals like long-term progress. And I started to connect those two dots, particularly in the gym and physical space. So again, got serious about rowing, skiing, um, did everything, tried to do everything. And then I remember kind of making deliberate decisions around, I think I abandoned probably or left certain friendship groups to try and get into new certain friendship groups. And look, I look back on that not with regret, but probably like some sadness from like this kid who's just like kind of lost and trying to figure out who his friends are and who his tribes are. And I've always probably felt like that outsider, but from the outside might look like an insider. So I was always kind of in the right groups, but felt not like I fitted in there, but wanted to be seen in those groups. So there was that kind of chip on the shoulder, I think, coming through there. And I remember being very creative and I'll call it entrepreneurial. I didn't know that word back then. But around like the local kids in the neighborhood, I remember this would have been early high school, even late primary school. I'd have a car wash business. I'd like navigated. We had a bunch of kids in the neighborhood and they were mostly younger. And I'd get them to like actually go wash the cars, and I would just like knock on the doors, get like 20 or $40 from the parents, pay the kids like $2 a car, and just like pocket all the difference. And that was like really exciting to me. And then I did the same for the paper route. I'd sign up to like multiple suburbs and then like under different names. And then I'd end up paying these kids to like go and deliver the papers. And then I would like kind of like run around on my bike, just monitoring that, making sure they were doing a good job, and then collect all the money and then pay them like way less. And like that stuff just felt fun. Like it felt like an opportunity. There was supply and demand, and there was this like opportunity to make some money. And then the last one I remember was doing kind of more like mid high school now was eBay was becoming a thing. And I figured out you could buy stuff in the US for like way cheaper and then sell it in Australia. And I remember I was at the time started dating a girl in the eastern suburbs, and they all had this like GHD hair straighteners, and they're like $400 or $500, and everyone wanted one, and you could buy them in the US for like $150. So like I ended up buying these GHD hair straighteners in the US and then selling them like literally out of my backpack in Bondi Junction, like after school to like girls around the eastern suburbs, and we ended up having like $15,000 worth of GHD hair straighteners. And then one time that big shipment, we kept like buying more every time we'd sell them. And then that one shipment of like 15,000 got seized or like they got stuck at customs, and they were like asking for paperwork because obviously it hit this threshold of, they're like, where's the ABN? Where's like your tax return? Where's the import license? And we got this letter in my business partner at the time, a good mate. And they were like, where's all this stuff? And we're like, oh shit, we have none of it. Like we're just two kids like just doing this with cash.
Out of curiosity, how old were you?
We would have been 15 at this time. And we said, like, let's just write them back and say, I'm so sorry. Please don't tell my parents. And you keep the GHDs, like we're out of the game kind of thing. So that ended my like import-export business back then. But like I had this excitement for business or entrepreneurship, maybe because my dad was doing it as a small businessman, or my mum did it, or a memory that really stands out to me is my brother would be a very good reader, and he would get through Harry Potter in a weekend. He would just like read all the Lord of the Rings books at, in year 9 or year 10. I was in year 7 or 8, and I just like could not get through a chapter. Like I would just really struggle. Probably self-diagnosed dyslexic probably is a good testament there, where I'd just like not be able to read words out loud, and I would just like kind of jumble them up in my mind and say, just like go off script all the time. And so I found like reading back then, like, I don't know, quite challenging. I just got bored so quickly. And then my mum, I don't know where I picked it up. Maybe my mum got it for me. The Richard Branson biography. And I just got through it in a week. And for the first time in my life, I just got through this book cover to cover, and I was like excited to turn the page. I was excited to read. And it was something about what was Branson's story in the time, like selling magazines when he was a kid at college and trying to do crazy stuff against airlines. And that just story just lit me up. And I was like, oh, I actually love reading. I just didn't find what the material was. I didn't love fiction reading. So that kind of probably got me more excited about the entrepreneurial path, and thinking that might be my future. But back then, entrepreneurship really wasn't cool. It wasn't like what you see now with the Social Network movie, kind of making it super cool with hoodies and billion-dollar valuations. And Elon Musk is like a hero of our times, or Steve Jobs previously, or these guys. really didn't exist back then. It was like Branson was like the one figurehead, and then everyone else that you said the word entrepreneur to, you'd be like this kind of washed up used car salesman type vibe. And there was no like career path for entrepreneurship. There was no like way into it. I didn't know really any entrepreneurs. So I always thought when I was thinking about like, I love this business thing that I'm doing on the weekends and after school, and what I kept thinking and reading about. And then I eventually found, like, okay, what's my way into business? Like, what does business and success look like? And for me, I thought the definition of success was like investment banking, mergers and acquisitions. So one of my friend's dads at Shaw, he was the CEO of Merrill Lynch at the time, this big investment bank. So like for my 16th, when I was 16, that intern year, I ended up doing an internship with the CEO of Merrill Lynch, and I was like sitting outside his office and got to watch him do it. And I was like, okay, that's my poster child of success now, is this like MMA kind of investment banking corporate career path. So, and then I started mapping back, like, how do I get to that level? And out of high school, no one was hiring in investment banking or private equity as like an 18-year-old kid, but who was hiring was like the big four accounting firms. And you could go there for a couple of years, kind of cut your teeth whilst you're doing your uni. And then you can kind of like fast track your path into IB and kind of the corporate finance world. So I started kind of angling towards that. At high school, my best subjects were like economics, business studies, physics, and probably PhD. And started angling towards, I guess, how do I get into the corporate world to start with? So when I was 18, I started interviewing when I was like finishing up high school. I hadn't finished up yet. I was probably 17. I started interviewing for like the big four for like their trainee cadetship programs. I remember failing the first three. Like I had interviews with Deloitte, with KPMG, with EY, and like they all just said, no, I didn't even get past. One of them got past the first round, like the others didn't even get past the first round. And I was like, oh shit, I'm like going to miss this opportunity. I had one offer from like this mid-tier firm that I wasn't that excited about. And then like the universe sometimes just conspires to help you. And my dad was just at like Wharf Bar with, like, he was recently single from my mum. And I think he was like just meeting random people. And one was like the HR manager at PwC. And then he's not to my face, but often he's a very proud dad. So he's like talking about my achievements, and like I'm interviewing for these other accounting firms. And then this HR manager's like, oh, would love for him to interview at PwC. So I was like, oh, PwC initially hadn't even called me back from my application. So, you know, he comes home, or the next day he kind of tells me about this person, and like he's got me an interview now at PwC. So that was very lucky. But the day of the interview was like right after my last day I finished my HSC exam. And my brother, in his goodwill and mean spirits, was like, let's go out and like take you to Greenwood. It was on a Thursday. And there's a photo literally online of like me, middle of the dance floor at like 3 a.m. at Greenwood. I think I have like vomit or like just drinks all over my shirt. I'm like in the middle of this going crazy. I don't even know what time we got home that day. The interview's at like 8 a.m. I remember my mum waking me up at like 7:15, like dragging me out of bed. I think I peed my bed that night. Like I was still in my clothes. I was like proper drunk that night. And I was like, oh, I've completely fucked this interview. This is not a good look. But like my mum's not happy, but she drags me out the door, gets me in my little suit, and it's like an all-day interview process. So it's like, you got to do tests, you're interviewing with a couple partners, you've got to do teamwork tests. And I'm like the most hungover I've ever been in my life. And I remember just like, there's this jugs of water, like they always do in meeting rooms and stuff. And like the whole day, I'm just like, just filling up the jug to myself and just like, and the guy next to me, like halfway through, he's like, dude, are you really hungover? I was like, and I was like, I'm definitely not getting this job. But I think I was like not in my head as much as I was with the other interviews, where I probably overpresented and wasn't as relaxed and natural. So I end up like nailing the interview in the day and got the job. And I convinced them, I was like, hey, I'm super keen to start. Like, can I start in a couple of weeks? And they were like, yeah, sure. You can start at the start of January in our cadetship program, which was, most people went to university for a year, which I didn't realize. I thought you could kind of choose. And then you come after a year of university, you come work full time, and then you go a year of uni to finish it off whilst working part time. But I was like just super keen to get into it. So I, 2 weeks later, finishing HSC, started as like Sydney's youngest employee at PwC. I think it was Australia's youngest employee at PwC at the time. I just turned 18 and I hadn't gone to uni yet. And I'm like going out to Westpac auditing their financial accounts and looking at their credit risk. And I'm like, I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing. But I did realize that they were charging me out to these clients at like $330 an hour. And then I calculated my wage and it was like $11.20. And I'm like, how are they charging this unqualified junior for $330 an hour? And I was getting $11. So it was like, it just like, and it was like the first red flag of like me not getting the right end of this deal. And like, if I want to have true wealth and true ownership and true success, like I want to be an owner and I want to not just be a corporate slave or someone who just works for someone else all the time, because the person that they're working for often have to take the risk, but they get all 99% of the reward as well. One thing that was probably most pivotal in my life at that time, just around that HSE, like a year earlier, was my parents getting divorced. I, as I said before, found such safety and security and like, I was quite proud of my family growing up. I was like, we're such a good family. We didn't really fight that much, or I didn't think so. And, but yeah, unfortunately, just out of nowhere, like my parents got divorced, and that really threw me. I kind of had quite a break in my relationship with my mum, unfortunately. And then my dad, he like for the first time really stepped in and was like, hey, let me try and help and be there for you. And I felt like me and my dad got closer, because I think he was feeling really bad about the situation as well. So that was an impactful moment. I think that was probably one of the first like big ruptures of my life of like not it going how I was thinking it was going to go. And this junction of like, oh shit, not everything is as it seems. And I kind of need to start looking after myself a bit more and kind of be a bit more independent and not just be a kid forever in this like kind of fantasy land that everything's going to work out just fine. But yeah, very quickly at PwC realized that I didn't love it. I didn't like, my heart wasn't in it. Not that I didn't know what I was doing as well. I was kind of figuring that quite quickly. I was on like a little fast track for management, and like if I did that plus my studies, but like you just could not get me to university. Like I struggled to go. I was at UTS doing business, and that was like a requirement for my job, was like to keep doing that, because eventually I had to graduate to then go work full time as like a manager at PwC. And I went to class like once a month, maybe at best. And like I'd always be working full time. So then I was supposed to be in classes part time after work or on weekends or whenever it was. And I had like, I think a day off to do it. And I just could not be like the promised land of the content or doing a degree was, oh, do this degree and then you can get a job like what I have at PwC. And I'm like, I've already got the job and I don't love it and it's not lined me up. Like there was just no incentive or reward that I wanted to chase through this degree. And as I said before, like I never really loved studying at the time. I was naturally quite smart enough to figure it out, or like just pick up stuff as people are saying things and then remember it on test day. Even in the HSC, I would just struggled to sit down. So I'm probably again self-diagnosed like ADHD or something. And again, they're probably good combos for an entrepreneur, like an ADHD dyslexic is. I probably picked it up from Branson at some point through his book and probably self-identified as well. Definitely not diagnosed, but symptoms are presenting. And then, yeah, so then at this PwC, I remember sitting there in the Darling Harbour office looking out across probably the Piermont Casino. And I was like, it's not lit up. And I was like on Instagram. I was reading like Business Insider at the time. And there's an article that just came out that Instagram just got bought by Facebook for like $1 billion after 18 months in market. It was like a 5-person team. I was like, that's cool. Like, I want to do something like that. And that like lit me up. It got me excited. And I started thinking, what type of ideas or apps or things could I build that could get sold to Facebook for $1 billion? Like that was the business plan. And I remember Facebook, like Zuckerberg was just a couple years old. I was 20 at the time. No, 19 at the time. Zuckerberg was like 20, 25. He was like the world's youngest billionaire. And he's like built Facebook to this like massive, massive thing with 1 billion users. And I was like kind of aspiring for doing something like that instead of auditing, Macquarie's financial accounts. So then started thinking like, okay, what did I see? I saw these opportunities on Facebook between girls all the time doing like buy, sell, swap groups with clothes or with movie tickets, or I think I first came across it in university textbooks. I remember like people posting to their Facebook in these buy, sell, swap groups like, hey, I've got this university textbooks, and then there was like these little auctions happening in the comments, and then they would like DM and talk about it and finalize payments offline, and it was just like popping up everywhere on my feed. Like became quite active, and I was like, surely people are moving away from eBay. Like that felt old, untrusted. It wasn't really as much between peer to peer anymore. It was like you're buying from a shop realistically. And then Gumtree was there, but felt like a little bit dodgy. There was no social trust in Gumtree. So I thought like eBay and Facebook are going to come together in like social commerce. And I like had that idea and had that thought, and no one in the world had done it at the time. And I started that down that path, which was like my first proper venture into business, for like my own proper business and my proper startup, let's call it. And I was so bold that I thought Facebook would buy me. I called it Face Buyer. And it was like, I thought clever word in between like eBay and Facebook, and it kind of like nudged at the intersection and thought it was clever. So I went for that and started. There's a person at PwC that was like, oh, that's a great idea. You should maybe think about doing it. I was then going to go down and start raising money. And my dad was like, hey, like, this is a great idea. Love it. Like, I'm happy to loan you some money if you want to have a go at it. So I ended up not taking on VC money. My dad was going to help me fund the app development part of it with this amazing app developer out of India who also we really didn't know what they were doing in hindsight. And I was 19 trying to figure out how to build an app. And I was like, obviously AI wasn't available back then. Google was still early, and I was just trying to read books and trying to figure it out. But I wasn't as obsessed as in hindsight look back. I wasn't as obsessed as you probably needed to be at that stage. And I remember still going out and partying a lot. I was like young. I was at PwC, and I had like this little mini corporate credit card, and I was in a suit, and I was more successful than my peers and all that. And I was trying to prove to the world something. And I remember not feeling, I feel like a bit of a fraud, to be honest, doing the app at the same time as PwC. Like I felt a fraud on both. I was like, I'm not really bought into this PwC thing, but I'm pretending to be like this corporate executive person. And then on the startup side, I'm like trying to be this like young startup entrepreneur. And I was getting in press and publications, and I was voted like top 25 entrepreneurs under 25. And we were the finalists in this like global $1 million pitch competition. And, but again, I felt like an outsider amongst these like insider circles again. And I thought, no, I need to commit. I need to like go all in. I need to like figure this out. And PwC is definitely not my path. And my dad really wanted me to stay. And then I remember watching this commencement talk from Jim Carrey, and he talks about his dad. And Jim Carrey, one of the funniest comedians around, he said his dad was even funnier than him, and he loved comedy. And it's like all he wanted to do was talk about comedy all the time. And then he asked him like, well, why didn't you choose a career in comedy? And he's like, well, I need to be safe. I need to provide financial security for your family and for you. So I took a job as I think it was an accountant, just to rub it in a little bit in my story, but took a job as an accountant for like the police force, like someone really safe. And after like years of hard work, he got made redundant anyway in that job, and like really struggled and had thrown his family into financial ruin / uncomfortableness anyway. And then Jim's like, if you can fail at something that you don't want to do, you might as well try something you do want to do. And that just like hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, what am I doing? Like my plan A to Z should still try and make me happy. Me being PwC, get a white picket fence, a BMW, and a partner by the time I'm 29 or 30 and earn $500,000 a year does not excite me, because I have to go to work every day and I have to do something I'm not passionate about at the end of the day. So I ended up writing this like 16-page letter to my parents and explaining why I wanted to drop out of university and why I wanted to drop out of PwC. And they were in tears, because my dad came from a very small farm town in Victoria, very poor. Like they didn't have anything. They worked on the farm every day. The parents never made it out of that situation. His whole family's still rural Victoria. And he'd worked so hard to kind of like get me some of these opportunities, to get to shore, to get to, PwC. He cried when I got the job, because he's like, oh, like my son's made it. Like he's safe now. Like he's okay. I don't need to look after him. And I think my mum was very proud, and she liked telling everyone I had a big corporate job. And, but inside just wasn't me. So I had to like explain that in really detailed ways. And they kind of accepted it a little bit, but I was like, had already made up my mind by that point. So I thought, how am I going to fund myself? Because I had PwC money. And then I was like, I need to now come up with rent money and live in money. And because I'd started to get some traction and press with FaceBuy, and like publicly it was doing well. We had 10,000 of downloads. We were on one of the top lifestyle apps. We were getting lots of press. Like that looked like it was promising, and we're in talks with VCs. But I had no money coming in. Like we hadn't made $0 yet, and we had lots of expenses. But a few people reached out to me from the US, and they're like, "Hey, Steve, you're clearly entrepreneurial. Like you seem ambitious. Do you want to hear about an opportunity?" I was like, "Yeah, I love opportunities. What is it?" And it was, of all things, this healthy energy drink network marketing company called Vima or Verve, and they were like trying to sell like a healthy Red Bull, but through network marketing, which is like you get paid to share it with your friends, and then if they share it with their friends, they get paid, and then if you kind of like map out the incentive structure, it looks a lot like a pyramid. But they promised me it's not a pyramid scheme, and it's network marketing. It's a massive industry like Revlon and Amway and Herbalife and all these companies are network marketing companies. So there is like a legitimate business model there that they're pointing to. So it's like, perfect, I can get paid to promote energy drinks effectively to my friends. And there was case studies of these young kids making like heaps and heaps of money in the US. And I could be like one of the first in Australia to do it. So I was like, great. And then I leveraged all of my like reputation I built through doing all this FaceBuy stuff and pressed just to like sign up like all of my friends from high school, all of the people I knew in my networks, try to get people from PwC on board. And very quickly I built like this decent like team, they call it, or leg in Australia for Verve and this Vima energy drink. And then no one beneath me had much success with it because like you did have to hustle, you did have to really sell. I remember I had a co-working space I'd rented down here in Manly, and after everyone had left for the day, I would then host these like little sales events where like everyone could bring a prospect and would like play these videos and hype up and have the drinks there, and would just like have these like big sell-in kind of competitions. And it looked like I had this giant office because everyone had left for the day from the co-working space, and there was like the bar there and the conference room. We would zoom in people from the US, and in hindsight it was great fun, but it was like this big hype up hustle kind of thing to try and get people excited about joining. And whilst I was doing that, I started exploring VC money for FaceBuy. I don't know how the universe works, but in 1 week, it just all came crumbling down. And I woke up, and it was a US time. So I think I'd like, maybe it was even like coming home from a club, or like I woke up quite early and I got this email from like Facebook's legal team. And I was like, oh, initially I was like, oh, like, are we talking MMA here? Are we talking acquisitions or something? And it was this cease and desist letter. And it was like, hey, you're in trademark infringement for using the word FaceBuy and face on the platform Facebook. And apparently they were trying to say they owned the word face. And my whole integration, because it was buy, sell, swap between your friends, was built on Facebook integration and the API and their platform. And I'd built up tens of thousands of likes. Back then you had your profile on Facebook was like a Instagram page, and you build up all these likes and you get 1-for-1 reach. And they'd like turned off the integration. They'd turned like blocks my page, and they'd like suing me for trademark infringement and like copy use and all this money. And I was like, oh shit, like overnight, just like I had no idea like what had just happened. And then like, I reckon it was a day, maybe a day and a half, 2 days. I like stopped hearing from like all the people on this Vima side and this Verve energy drink side. And then like all this press came out, like they'd been confirmed as a pyramid scheme. And like they'd been shut down, and like the founders were getting taken to court, and like that had just collapsed in one foul swoop as well. And I was just like, what the fuck? Like, how is this possible? Like, I was so cocky at the time. I thought everything was working out perfectly. I'd like tricked the system. I left PwC. I'd like bet it all, and it was all working out. I was going to be sipping margaritas, you know, in a couple of years' time, and sold to billions of dollars for Facebook, and I'd get some VC money and go for it. And yeah, that just like came crashing down. And I don't remember much from that like first week or two. I felt like I was just in shell shock, and I was like, how do I even tell anyone? I think I just like hid, because then I had people who worked for me on Vima trying to reach out, and then I was like, fuck, I don't even know what to say. And like my whole reputation on both sides had just come like calming down. I was like, now I'm like this fraud pyramid scheme guy, and like no one had known it yet, but like my app that I was just like told the world about, and it was working to some degree, had just been like deleted overnight effectively. And then I was going to have to tell my dad like I'd lost his money, and from this like shame, I guess, because he backed me, and he like we weren't a wealthy family whatsoever. So like it was his retirement money like that he'd given to me, not a huge like in the grand scheme of things amount of money, but for him it was very meaningful, and for me it was very meaningful. So I remember in that kind of darkness thinking like, how the fuck am I going to get out of this? And there's a book by Ryan Holiday called Ego is the Enemy. And that just like hit me. I was like, fuck, like my ego. And at school, I think I developed it because I got bullied a bit, and it was like my shield and my armor. And I was like trying to pretend like people, their comments didn't really affect me. And I was like, you know, trying to put this mask out to the world. And then like that mask just got ripped off me, and I was like, fuck, like, is this what I actually am? I'm like, I just like a failure. And I'd left PwC, I left uni, I'd done all these things. So I thought ego's probably the contributing factor to all those things. And if ego's the enemy, there's this great line. There's this great line from the Stoics. They talk about the obstacle is the way. If the impediment to action advances action. So I'm like, if the impediment to action is the obstacle, then the obstacle being like humility is probably the way forward. I was like, fuck, like how do I start like learning humility? Because the world had just forced me to learn it. And I wanted to start learning from people smarter than me. And I remember when I was reading books, and I'm like, they often had these mentors like throughout the way, and they often had people that learned from, dead or alive. And I was like, I'm just going to go obsess with learning through books and then through like real people. And I wanted to just kind of go in this shell and rebuild and come out the other side okay, but I didn't really know how to like confront and navigate the world at the time. And I like my self-esteem went to zero. But I started with the Young Rich list, and I just like the fast BRW fast starter list and all this kind of stuff. And I just like emailed and tried to reach out to, or on LinkedIn, or like had a friend of a friend, like the top 50. And I think I got coffees with like 16 of them. And I'll just ask them like, hey, what's your advice for starting out? I think I hadn't like fully accepted, because we were trying to fight legally the face buy thing still. I hadn't like accepted that was fully dead yet. So it was like pretending like that was still going, and like I could try and figure my way out of that. And then I was like trying to figure out what I'm going to do next for work, because my income from the network marketing had fallen over. And then really smart people, successful young people would be like, okay, run this direction, you know, really hard, and this is the way I did it. And then I'd meet with someone a couple of days later with the coffee, and they'll go like, run this direction really hard, and this is my advice. And someone else would like 2 weeks later say, no, you need to be doing this and read this book, and this is your path forward from here. And it was all really helpful, well-intentioned advice. But if you run 1 mile in 20 directions, you end up in the same place. And I really wanted to like make meaningful progress in one direction. So I was like, I need to pick this mentor, pick one direction, and figure out what I'm going to do with myself. And I'm 20, 21 at the time. I'm not even 21 yet. And one of the guys at the top of my list was this guy called Sam Prince. And he was a medical doctor. He'd started Zambrero. He's now a billionaire. Had won like some amazing awards. He's a big philanthropist. And I thought like he is a great example that I could learn from, who was like 9 years older than me, young enough that could relate to my part in the journey, but old enough that like figured it out, had the scars to prove it. So I had one mutual friend with him who was a DJ, and Sam was trying to get into DJing at the time. I was like, hey man, like you got to connect me. Can you invite him to one of your next events? And he did. He's like, yeah, cool. We're doing this launch of Hugo's in the Cross. It's on a Friday night. And of all things at the time, to pay my wages at this time, I was a club promoter in Shore Club in Manly. And I was putting on like Escape Sundays and some like epic, awesome events with DJs. And that's I guess how I had this DJ friend. And I had to work Friday night at the club, and then I had to go to Hugo's. And my girlfriend at the time was like, oh, you can't go to Hugo's. Like you've already been out, you know, just come home. I was like, no, like I promised my friends, like I'll go to Hugo's. But I won't drink because I needed to drive there. And also I'd figured out or heard Sam wasn't a big drinker. So I was like, oh, like the two sober people always end up chatting at the party. Like literally I walk in, say hello to everyone. And then like I'm by the bar, like sipping a sparkling water. And then like Sam's there right next to me, sipping a sparkling water. And I was like, got connected and we became chatting and we ended up talking for like an hour. We then left there. We got some Mexican food. Then I was like, hey, I'm driving. I can drive you home. So I drove him to Bondi. So we've got another hour together and just like absorbed as much information as I could in those 3 hours. And we had a great conversation. And he recommended me this book because that's like one of my favorite questions to ask people when I was just starting. I was like, what book do you recommend? And he's like, Atlas Shrugged, which is a fantastic read by Ayn Rand, but it's a giant book. And I was like, all right, sick. And then I just devoured the book. I loved it. It was a fiction book, but it was like entrepreneurial and about building stuff and capitalism, all these great things. And I came back to him like a week and a half later, like 2 weeks later, and I texted him. I was like, hey, just finished the book. These are my takeaways. I love Hank Rearden doing this and Dagny Taggart, I love that. And he's like, hundreds of people have like asked me for advice. Hundreds of people asked me for book recommendations. Like not one person has ever actually read the book. And he's like, you're the first to do it. And I was like, all right, like there's something in this to like actually doing what you're going to say you're going to do, following through, being more proactive than the rest of them, like just putting yourself out there more. And we started kind of like catching up for coffees and dinners and hanging out. They became quite close friends and very much in like that kind of mentor relationship. And then I was like, hey, like, how do I become your PA? Like, how do I learn as much as I can from you? But like me getting your coffee with you or going for a drink every month or so is just not going to get me enough information quickly. Like I'm not going to actually learn what it's like in the room with a hiring decision or, you know, what it looks like when you start a business or when you're trying to turn a business around. And his PA had just started. So he's like, I don't need a PA. But the current CEO at the time of Zambro, a guy called Stuart Cook, needed a PA for like 6 weeks before going to Thailand to try and launch Zambro in Thailand. And he's like, you can do that if you want. And like, again, the same week, I remember I had an offer from a VC to try and help me like dig this face buy problem out and like try to help me like rebrand and was going to like try and rebuild and I could double down there. Like they'd offered a decent amount of money at the time. And I was like confronted with like, do I go be a PA for a CEO who's literally about to leave the country for 6 weeks with no like further career path past that? Or do I like take some VC money for my startup and like really try and have another crack and try and rebuild that out of the ashes? And I don't know what it was in me, but I was like, I'm taking the PA job. Like I need to learn. I need to go learn from someone smarter than me. And I don't know where this path is going to go, but I don't think I'm ready for that path. And it was those words of just like the ego, like the obstacle is the way, like they just kept ringing in my ears. I was like, that's the obstacle. Like I need to go that way. I don't want to be a PA. I'm this like, by that point, entrepreneur with news articles and like most photos to succeed and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, going to go be a PA for not even like the entrepreneur, for like the CEO who's about to leave the country. But it felt like the right thing to do. And yeah, showed up day one, like a whole new path. And I was like doing emails and getting his lunch and driving him around and whatever I need to do for 6 weeks for Stuart before he wrapped up. But then Sam's PA didn't work out in that time. So by the end of the 6 weeks, I was like, hey, I want to be your PA. He's like, and Stuart's like, he's not like an amazing PA. Like I'm not the most organized guy. I said before, I was like ADHD and dyslexic. Like I wasn't built to be a PA at that time, but I was willing to learn. I was willing to work harder than anyone else. So I convinced them, I was like, hey, like, give me a chance. Like, give me 30 days, give me 60 days. Like, I just want to be learning. I want to be more closely with you to be able to absorb all this kind of information from his world. So he's like, look, I'll give you 30 days. If you make a mistake, you got to make no mistakes being a PA, like a world-class PA for 30 days. If you make a mistake, you start back to one again. You need to be able to complete 30 days to actually figure this out. And then like day 2 are like double booked him in a meeting or like forgot he was supposed to be there and like no travel time was in his calendar. Or the next day, like started back to day 1 and then like I got to like a week and then forgot his lunch and like didn't pick him up in the morning. Like just some simple stuff that you just don't really think about. And then just, I reckon I restarted maybe 5 or 6 times and I finally got to 30 days with no mistakes. And he's like, right, like you can be a PA. And then I was like, right, how do I get to an EA level? And then it was like, okay, you need to start like doing business planning and you need to start helping with pitch decks and you need to start being in the room and giving us some advice or managing projects without my direct involvement. But at that time, like when I first got that job with Sam more than Stuart, I just went obsessed. I was like not going out. I stopped drinking altogether. I started waking up at 4:24. I saw Kobe Bryant, the documentary when he released that, and that just like worked this fire inside of me with the opportunities I had at the time. So I was like up every morning at 4:24. We were working till like 11 p.m. Sam was doing speeches. We were running multiple companies, and then we were like literally back to back to back to back all day. And then we'll try and do like gym workouts throughout the time as well and try and stay healthy. But like I didn't take weekends. I did not take a holiday. I had a girlfriend at the time and I did not see her much at all. And it was an all in obsession. And I just completely shedded every single part of my life and me and my personality. And I just was like a sponge. Like I was absorbing everything Sam was putting out, from the books to read, to how to speak, to how to do public talking, how to lead, how to hire, fire, raise money, network. But like in that time, like every single email that got sent from his like inbox was me. Every single calendar, every single meeting, I was actually physically in the room, listening, taking notes, and just like this massive accelerated learning curve of starting businesses and running big businesses. So it was like an incredible MBA type experience on top of the failures and all that stuff I had from FaceBuy. And after about 2 or 3 years, it became clear of like, all right, like I think I'm ready to start putting myself out in the world again. And it was like, okay, well, like, what's the idea? Like, what are we going to do? How do you want to test these new skills that you've just kind of developed? I always feel like it was in, like Batman Begins, and like he just goes in the mountains and just trains with the ninjas for a while. And he's like, then he comes back to Gotham. It was like that kind of moment in my life. I was like, all right, I'm like coming back to Gotham. I've done my time in the mountains, and what's the enemy? Like, what am I going to go try and build? And the answer came very organically with just the hours Sam and I were putting in all the time. We were just always on, but they were always tired. Like we're drinking so much coffee. We're drinking energy drinks. Like Sam's a doctor and I'm a healthy guy. I'm trying to stay fit. And like we're reaching for Red Bulls and stuff because it's the only thing in the market. Like you go downstairs to the servo. I'm tired as we've got 7 more hours of work to do. We've got emails to get through. We've got maybe a speech later that night or a podcast to do. So we start reaching for them. We're like, there's got to be a better way. And we both came across studies that have been like, no, there are actual ingredients and plants. And there's also drugs that help with cognition and mental performance and clarity and verbal fluency. In the US, there was like On It, Alpha Brain had just kind of started with Joe Rogan and Aubrey Marcus there. Those early days, but like there was whispers of that in kind of capsule form. And then there was like the movie Limitless with Bradley Cooper. And it was like, that made it kind of mainstream with this like smart drugs. And the closest thing to that at the time was probably like modafinil. I tried modafinil. That was a hell of a time, but like very intense. Your brain's like too much on. It's very similar to the movie where it's like, it's overpowering. Then you get really drained and then you kind of can't sleep. And long-term side effects aren't great there. But if you need to lock in for 12 hours, like it'll work. But through that, we're like, oh, like there's something here with like natural that's going to like help you sharpen, not overly stimulating with just caffeine. So things like L-theanine, B vitamins, ginkgo biloba, ginseng, like these things became like really nice plant-based, natural versions of nootropics. And like no one had put them in together in a drink to be able to easily get it back. Absorption rates are way better with drinks and you can make it delicious. We drink beverages all the time, every day. So it's like, it's a massive need state where a capsule or a drug feels like it could be quite niche, particularly in Australia. So we thought, let's create a drink. At the time we called it a smart drink, like based on smart drugs. Let's create a brain tonic, a smart drink. And that's my return to Gotham, so to speak, was we called it Shine because we wanted the feeling that people wanted to get inspired by. And he's like, cool, like go try and figure this out. And he'd fund it. And then it would be my blood, sweat and tears. He'd be the majority shareholder. And it was then on me to go build everything, figure out how to manufacture, figure out how to build team, how to market, how to sell into accounts, how to deal with Coles and Woolies one day or petrol stations or whatever it is. So I was 24, 2016, 1 July, we launched Shine. It was in 4 months earlier, February 2nd, I think it was. A guy called Andrew Duez, who is my age, and he months earlier had reached out because he wanted advice from like on how to he was trying to start a business or be a doctor, And he was kind of at a similar juncture. And he's like, I think I really want to do the doctor thing, but I've been accepted to medical school. What should I do? And I was like, follow your heart. And I was kind of like an informal mentor, similar to how I was with Sam to start with. And we'd catch up and I'd give him advice. And at the time, I'd just read Tim Ferriss's like 4-Hour Body book. He talked about polyphasic sleeping, which is like you don't actually go to sleep for any core amount of time. You just have like 20-minute naps every 6 hours. And I was like, that sounds like a fun experiment. And I wasn't drinking at the time and I had a bunch of energy and ambition. So I was like, let's give that a go. And I started doing it for a couple of months. And then I told Drew about doing it. And then he's like, I'm going to do it as well. And then I remember like us just texting each other at like 2 a.m. in the morning or 4 a.m. in the morning. And just like, he was up, I was up. And I was like, man, like I'm about to go start this new drinks company with Sam. Like, do you want to come and learn entrepreneurship on the go? And it was a similar philosophy to what I did with Sam. It was like, see one, do one, teach one. And that's how they teach medicine, surgery and medicine. And it's like way more effective path to learning. If you think about medicine, you don't want to like learn surgery in a textbook and then go practice on like a live student. And unfortunately, that's what they do with business. It's like, here's a textbook and then good luck. And it's like, that kind of fucked me up. And I lost a bunch of money through that path and a bunch of social capital as well. And I really believed in this philosophy of like, see one, do one, teach one. So I said to him, I was like, hey, like come see it. Like, I'll teach you everything I've learned from Sam. I'd read 300-400 like books of entrepreneur biographies and nonfiction books and business books. And I'd just been obsessed. Like I'd accelerated learning so much in that time. I was like, I'll teach you everything that I know and Sam's learned. And then you can watch this. And then one day you can start your own thing and then I'll help you do that. And we can keep going. And then eventually he's like, yeah, that sounds fun. So then he kind of started with me in the trenches from February and we're like, all right, let's go to market. We want to launch by July. So we went to work with manufacturing and figuring out formulas and figuring out the science behind it and did lit reviews and flavors and formats and bottles and packaging and website builds and like everything I was learning kind of for the first time. And then we launched 1 July. We had like a little built up. We had this intern army. We sold out on our first day or like day and a half. We'd sold out of the, 200 cases that we'd sold or built to start with, which was a nice little start. And then the hustle and grind just started and just tried to apply all the lessons that I'd learned from Sam and from afar and all the books and stuff like that. And me and Drew were like, we split the business. He was doing operations and manufacturing and supply chain, and I was doing sales, marketing, brand, and team leadership stuff. So he would make it, I would go sell it. And that was an incredible journey at Shine. We were the first nootropic energy drink. We weren't even an energy drink back then. It was a tonic. It was this 100 ml little shot. It was a clear bottle. It was super cool. And it was like you could put it on a counter, and it was just like this ginger lemon kind of flavor. Had like a little tickle to the throat, which is nice. And it was the first market. Learned a fuckload. Did everything you weren't supposed to do. Went way too custom, way too niche. Marketing was way too scientific to start with. We hired like interns. Like I had 12 interns at one point. Wasn't paying anyone. Just to kind of just get some momentum and get some progress, get this out of this like cold start process. And then it worked. Like I just went door to door knocking, literally walking into stores with a little box of Shine. I was like, hey, can I put it on your counter? And if it doesn't sell, I'll come back and pick it up. And just did that day in, day out from like 11 a.m. till 5 p.m. most days. And in the mornings was more like strategy and planning stuff, and then hit the roads. And then we just did that, got to maybe 300 stores in the first 5-6 months. Got some trials in like Woolworths Metro, Harris Farm, and then Zambro. We got to trial in Zambro. Obviously, Sam owned that, which was like a good in, but they weren't going to give us a national rollout because it was still a franchise. Like it had to be a good product that actually was going to get sold. And then we did well in the trial, so we went national with Zambro, and then we figured out like petrol convenience was like a really good point for us. So went down that path and got into Caltex and did a trial, and then went national, and then just a game of momentum. And it's just like each win leads to the next win. And this is a philosophy I kind of took from that. I was like, win or learn. Like take the win, double down, or what's the learn? And then absorb that learn. The quicker you can absorb it, the more true you can absorb it, then the quicker you're going to get back to the win, and you can kind of keep leveling up. And that's really the only way to progress, is to stack learns, which is ultimately stacking lessons, which obviously can be sometimes seen as stacking failures from the outside. But Winston Churchill talks about like success is literally going from one failure to another with no loss of enthusiasm. And that's how I see the game of progress. It's like just stacking these consecutive ways of things that don't work. Because you want one thing closer to figuring out what does work. And that was Shine. Like, we were making mistakes left, right, and center. We made a bunch of mistakes in that journey. I think at the time I was just still so obsessed with all in culture, with like hustle and grind, and locked in for 4 days. And I wasn't taking holidays for 3 or 4 years when I first started Shine. Um, and then probably about in year 5, I started to put my head up. I started to be like, oh, is this life? Like, is this me forever? Like, I'm just going to be like 24/7 locked in, just like obsessed with work. Like, I had no friends outside of the people I'd work with. And I'd seen like other successful people through Sam's network as well, who like very successful, wealthy, like financially, but like kind of broken individuals, like broken families or no families, like no life outside work, no joy in their, like they were unhealthy, they were overweight, they looked like they were 60 and they were 40. Like, I was like, that's not me. Like, I don't want actually that life. And I was kind of like heading on a highway towards it. And that's when I started to try and build my own network of like other entrepreneurs. I started getting performance coaching. And I started being like, hey, what does more holistic life look like? And what do I want to tell my kids about? What I want to be proud of? What type of person I want to be, not just in business. And that was, I think, a turning point. And over time, like truthfully, like Sam and I stopped hanging out as much as well. Like, he was in the US more with his business, and we'd started this thing kind of like me, Drew, Sam, we're like, 3 brothers, like just going on this journey together. And then about 3 or 4 years, Drew had left Shine as well. He went to go start his own thing. And then Sam was doing his own. And I was like kind of running this by myself now. And it was like probably a bit lonely as well. And I was like, maybe I need to start thinking about what's next, and what's the end of this chapter kind of nicely. And towards the end of Shine, we always thought we'd kind of have an exit and sell it to a big multinational. And I wanted to not go work for a big multinational. Like, I was 27, 28, 29, 30. I was like, I don't want to go work for 5 years at Pepsi, let's say. Like, I'm in my prime. I'm like full of energy, full of life. Wanted to go start more brands. I wanted to go start new things. And I didn't, and I had mates who'd sold to big multinationals and kind of get miserable for 5 years. I'm like, 5 years is a long time to just be like doing not much, except for maximizing your earn out return, from like getting all the money off the table. So, we all kind of were like, all right, it probably makes more sense to get someone who wants to be more involved in an exit, wants to go work for a bigger multinational, wants to be, and also like, I didn't want to be like the key man. I'm very much entrepreneurial, very founder. I think we need more process, more systems, more like repeatability, more structure, more probably gray hair. And so I ended up leaving Shine, put someone else in place. There was a deal to it get sold. I'm now no longer actively involved in Shine. I'm still a shareholder, but I actually don't know. I think that fell over at the last minute, which was annoying. And I think they've got some plans now for Shine, but I've been across that for the last couple of years. When I left Shine, the 1 July is like literally almost identically 7 years from start to finish. And I remember it was kind of sad. Like, it wasn't the finish to that chapter that I was hoping for, to be honest. I always thought it would end differently. But I think, like all things, it's for the best. Like, I'm very optimistic. I still hope that like a good outcome will happen there. I think they've done some stuff since then that I wouldn't have done, and I'd probably disagree with their strategy a bit, but it's like I had to like let go of the baby, let it just out in the world, and it kind of needs to find its own feet, so to speak. And Sam and their team is still involved in doing what they think is best. And I was like, by the end, I was like just done. I was burnt out. I was not sure what was next. I was like, I just need a holiday. I need a break. I've been just like locked in for 10 years now. Like, it was literally my 10 year since I started with Sam by that point. So it's like, I'm going to go to Europe. A key part of the story I probably should mention is I ended up getting married as well. I had this partner for 7 years, and I quickly, like, I had property. I bought investment property. I had properties, and I had a wife, and I had like a business that was like multi 8 figures. And I was like, oh, like life is supposed to be like at its pinnacle, the best. And inside I was just, I think, just broken. I was like, I just built a house of things that I didn't actually like truly align with myself. And I think I'd been so influenced by some of my mentors and some of the directions I was taking for the last 10 years. I was like, do I actually want that life? Like, do I want to be that person? And the more I was trying to like find myself, and the more I was like trying to have the courage to look, the more I was like, oh shit, like I wasn't truly like aligned to my ex-partner. Like we were very, very, very different people. We just never spent any time together because I was always working. And by the time I was like starting to put my head up and go like, hey, let's go on holidays or let's try and take some time off, found out we're very, very different people. So I ended up getting divorced. That's like the short version of that. The divorce papers were signed on my last day of Shine. I like left the doors at my business I'd started on Shine. And a few months earlier, I started dating Taylor. And we unplanned had fallen pregnant. And we'd found out, I'm not even kidding, the night before my last day of Shine. So it's like this fucking universe had just, again, like just come together. And like I was just completely blown away at this point. And I was like, I don't have a job. I don't have a company. I don't know what's next. And I've just got divorced. And then I've just like found out we're pregnant. And I'm like, are we serious? Like, what the fuck is going on? And I couldn't believe it. I love Taylor. Like we fell in love very, very quickly. I always thought, yeah, I always wanted kids and I always wanted a family. Did I think I was ready at the time to have a family? Absolutely not. It was like the worst time to have a family. I wanted to go to Europe. We had a Europe trip booked. I was going to go to Europe for a couple months. I never did a Europe trip. Like when I was like 18, 19, 20, I'd always just worked full time. And I just wanted to take some time off. And I was like, the universe gives you what you want, not gives you what you need, not what you want. And it's that like old saying, like the darkest cave holds the treasure you seek the most. And I was like, fuck, all right, the universe, trust it. Like it's given me this blessing. And we weren't sure we're going to keep it, being truthfully honest. And I spoke to some people. We saw some therapists. She spoke to people. We saw some therapists. And I came to, I was like, this is the blessing in the darkest time. This is like the blessing of, this is the point of life. Like this is the meaning handed in a silver platter, but not how you're hoping to receive it. But like, this is them trying to show up and give it to you. And remember that old story of like the fisherman who gets lost at sea and he's like lying in, he's like stuck and he's like swept off in the middle of the ocean. He's Christian. He's like praying and he's like, oh, I really hope like God send me a sign. Like, I really hope God's going to show up. And then like this old fisherman boat like drives past and it's like, hey, do you need any help? He's like, no, I'm waiting for God. And then like another ship comes through and it's like getting harder and harder for him to swim. And he's like, hey, do you want any help? Like, you're right. He's like, no, I'm waiting for God. And then that happens a third time. And then he's like, no, and then he dies and he goes to heaven. And then God's like, he's like, hey man, like what the hell is praying? Like, why didn't you like do any, like, why didn't you come? He's like, I sent you 3 fucking boats. Like, just take the out. And I felt like that. I was like, I'm actually getting what I want, what I need right now. And I should lean into it. So we decided to obviously proceed with the baby and having a child together. And then we're like, right, well, like, let's get engaged, let's get married, like, let's just like accelerate this whole thing. And we just like met each other for like 6 months, I'd say, less than 6 months.
Wow.
And then I was like, okay, if I'm going to be here, I'm like going to build a family now. Like, I'm not going to go to Europe or move overseas or something crazy. I wanted to then start another business. I was like, let's go. Like, I was doing some consultancy stuff at the time and I didn't love consultancy. I thought I was like either going to build someone else's business for them, which was just like another employee paid as a contractor, or I was like doing like stuff that didn't really connect to the work. Like I'd give them a great plan and nothing would happen. I was like, oh, no point like investing my energy into that. I love building brands. I love building companies. So we decided we wanted to start a new company. I always wanted to build another brand. And in my trips to the US and Shine over the years, I'd always seen these like hydration sticks that were coming through, where you'd end up having in Australia like effervescent tablets, and they would dissolve and take forever, and there wasn't like great flavors, and you'd find them in chemist, and it was like very medical, and you felt like you were having diarrhea or something like that if you wanted to grab for them. Or there was like sports drinks, $1 billion category, Gatorade, Powerade, etc. And like no one healthy that I knew actually drank them, as it's like this marketing lie, like no sports drinks, like packed full of sugar, packed full of artificial stuff, and very little electrolytes. It's more flavor and sugar than anything. And that's not bad if you just want to consume sugar water and some tasty stuff. But for most people who are looking for like active days, active lives, actually want to like dial in their hydration, it's not for them. And I thought there's this opportunity in Australia where products in the US that were doing really well, like Liquid IV or Element, hadn't made it to Australia, or weren't really a thing in Australia. No one had kind of disrupted that category yet in Oz. And I thought with my background, I was sick of, at Shine, we built very aggressively through retail. By the peak there was at 7,000 stores. We did over 60 million in sales there. And I was like, I don't want to go deal with Coles and Woolies to start with. Like, that's not a great business model. I wanted to go direct to consumer. I wanted to have high margin, high repeat subscription based company that I can scale really quickly internationally as well, and then launch new formats as well. So it's just like perfect. Like no one had done it, white space, big opportunity, proven success overseas. And then at the end of the day, it was a really big personal, I guess, product for myself as well. Similar to where Shine started with like nootropics. I was like running a lot, working out a lot, saunas, ice baths, biohacking, taking nootropics. But for some reason, I'd always forgotten hydration. Like I'd never drank enough water, or I just drank heaps of plain water, and I still was drinking too much caffeine and other things. That my sleep was bad. Sometimes my digestion, gut problems weren't great. And I would be like stressed and feeling like anxious and things like that because I was like overly stimulated. And then I started, actually trying to focus on my hydration, drink enough water, put my salts in my water. And I was like, wow, I feel so much better. Sleeping better, recovering from workouts faster. My skin cleared up. I felt better. And I was like, oh, more people need to figure out this hydration thing. It's like so obvious and has such detrimental downstream effects, but no one really talked about it. It was like, just drink your water and you'll be fine. And it's like 80% of people in Australia suffer from dehydration and the symptoms of it, like brain fog, fatigue, bad sleep, poor recovery. And it's like quite an easy, obvious answer, but I think no one as a brand particularly owned that education for consumers as well. So that was super exciting. So we locked in on the name, got the trademark of the domain name. I'm a big brand guy, so wanted to reach out to the guy who built Heaps Normal and designed Heaps Normal. People who can make non-alcoholic beers cool in Australia, I think just nailed that. Like that was a big challenge, and they did an incredible job. And I thought that's really what we're trying to do. It's like we're making this boring old unsexy category cool and fun and, playful performance where athletes can use it, but busy mums can use it. And it's like that everyday Australian who's just trying to do a little bit better and be their best selves. And so, yeah, we started Hyro, incorporated it in November. I was trying to launch it really, really quickly. We launched it in February. Sorry, we launched it in April 2024. I think we sold out in a couple of days. It was like it's a similar time to what we sold out for Shine, but bigger numbers this time. And then we always wanted to get like athletes and ambassadors and investors and influencers on board as well. So we ended up reaching out with like Daily True Evans and Quade Cooper and Sarah's Day, and like all these guys invested their own money to kind of come on the journey with us. I think the fact that I'd built a brand before really helped. And then we invested heavily on brand, invested heavily on website, and then invested heavily on getting the right like credible ambassadors and influencers and stuff like that on board. And then made sure product was amazing, brand was amazing, category was amazing. I think they're the three like fits to find, like product fit, market fit, and brand fit. And then we found those three things very, very quickly. And then since then, it's just been like a rocket ship. I'm just trying to hold on. Like I've sold out like 8 or 9 times. Year-on-year growth is like 16 times. Average month-on-month growth is 42%. We've sold over like 2 million of these sachets in like 18, 20 months. We should do well north of like multiple 8 figures next year. Launching the US this week. Launching on TikTok Shop this week, Amazon. We've got 5 flavors. So it's like not a huge product range. And we've got 6 team members in the office, and we've got like 6 different agency partners. There's probably 100 or so people working on the brand at some point. So yeah, I'm like very proud of where we are now, because it's been this like massive accumulation of like all the wins and all the learns that have just been crazy hard sometimes to get to this point. And now it just feels like play, and now it feels fun. And I'm like back to my 16-year-old kid who's selling GHDs out the backpack at Bondi Junction after school, because it feels like what it should feel like, and I'm doing it with the right people. And for me, success, I figured out, is doing things you love with people you love. And that's my mission for the future as well.
Wow, what a journey that was. Thank you for that. I have one more question for you. What is a book recommendation you would give for Josh and I?
Book recommendations are hard to give off the top. For me, it's always like, what are you trying to achieve? And then there's like the symptom, and then there's medicine for symptoms. So like, what do you guys want to achieve?
I think for us, it's like through our media and everything we create, we want to add light into the world, through film, through stories.
We think like story connects people, and it has through time, like in different cultures and so many different mediums. Like the day that we live in now, that medium is like in our opinion, is film. Like we can, like I've learned so much from fictional movies. Like I remember being a kid and watching Indiana Jones and seeing him take leaps of faith, and like that applies to your life. They're the sorts of things we want to do: tell stories and connect people through that storytelling.
Yeah, love that. Well, I'd definitely then look towards, like, I love biographies because I think you can just absorb so much information through innuendo and like incidents, not just from like do this in a nonfiction way. So someone like a Rick Rubin, I think would be incredible, from the creative pursuit of perfection and like just putting good work out in the world and being proud of it and like following that crazy little voice inside of you. So I'd probably look towards like a Rick Rubin biography, or if in film particularly, I'd look at the greats of all time and I'd just like go read their books. Like if Steven Spielberg's got a book out, I'd read about that. Scorsese's got a book. I'd go down that path and just obsess with greats. You can learn so much more than just like the latest TikTok trend or like this short form video of someone trying to tell you how to make a new hook. It's like, look to the greatest of all time that have been there for over like not just decades, but sometimes like multiple generations. Like that's the timeless stuff that I think you can learn way more from.
Cool. Great. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.